I have the great pleasure of introducing our speaker for the evening. Dr. Jonathan C. Augustine serves as senior pastor of the St. Joseph AME Church in Durham, North Carolina, and general chaplain of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. He is a nationally recognized social justice advocate, multidisciplinary academic leader, and accomplished author who speaks for the equality of all human beings. In addition to his pastoral service, Dr. Augustine is a member of the faculty at Duke Divinity School, where he is also a member of the Board of Visitors and a missional strategist with the Duke Center for Reconciliation. Prior to leading St. Joseph, he led historic St. James AME Church, established in 1844, in downtown New Orleans, the oldest predominantly Black Protestant congregation in the Deep South, while simultaneously teaching at Southern University Law Center. He also taught as a visiting professor at North Carolina Central University of Law School. With research interests at the intersection of law and religion, his books include When Prophets Preach, Leadership and the Politics of the Pulpit, and Call to Reconciliation, How the Church Can Model Justice, Diversity, and Inclusion. His scholarly works on civil and voting rights, as well as other social justice matters, appear in numerous publications, including the Howard Law Journal, Louisiana Law Review, Connecticut Public Interest Law Journal, Southern California Interdisciplinary Law Journal, and the University of San Francisco Law Review, among others. His most recent work on the soul of Black preaching was published by Theology Today, a journal of Princeton Theological Seminary, and his forthcoming work on Confederate monument removals is being published by the University of Richmond Law Review. Dr. Augustine serves as chair of the board of directors of the N. Joyce Payne Center for Social Justice, an affiliate of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, and as a member of the board of directors of Partners Global, Inc. Among his many notable awards and distinctions, Dr. Augustine was named Outstanding Alumni Brother of the Year by Alpha Phi Alpha, established in 2017, after having won the fraternity's Belford V. Lawson National Oratorical Scholarship in 1994 as a college student. He was awarded President Barack Obama's Lifetime Achievement Award in 2016, the 10 Outstanding Young Americans Award in 2006, and was previously named to Ebony Magazine's 30 Leaders of the Future in 2001. He is a proud member of Sigma Pi Phi fraternity and a Silver Life member of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. After graduating from Howard University with a degree in economics, Dr. Augustine served as a decorated infantry officer in the United States Army. He earned his law degree at Tulane University and served as a law clerk to Chief Justice, then Associate Burnett Joshua Johnson, at the Louisiana Supreme Court before practicing law and serving in both publicly elected and appointed offices. He earned a Master of Divinity degree at United Theological Seminary before completing a fellowship at Princeton Theological Seminary and earning his Doctor of Ministry at Duke University. He is currently a candidate for Doctor of Education degree at the University of Alabama. Busy. Dr. J. Augustine is married to Michelle Burks Augustine. They are the parents of 2 college students, and I must say, he is my other pastor. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. J. Augustine.
Will you join me in just saying thank you? This has been a wonderful conference. Put your hands together for the leadership of Congresswoman Fu Shi, for all who are involved with the North Carolina Black Alliance. Put your hands together for Courtney Crowder. Put your hands together for Marcus Bass. I'm thankful for them, for their fraternal relationships. I'm thankful for all that they do to move the needle forward here in the great state of North Carolina. Now, as much as I am thankful to all of you, as much as I am thankful to be in this space at this time, I recognize that at some point tonight, I got to go home. That means I want to say thank you to my wife who is here with me, Michelle Burks Augustine, Michelle, my belle. I'm thankful to her too. I learned an expression, I should say, when I was a boy growing up in the black church, and the expression went something like this: tell the truth, shame the devil. Y'all heard that in your church too, huh? So what I want to do is a little truth telling tonight. I'm proud, and I'm giving thanks, of course, that I am the speaker, but I recognize that I was not the first choice to be the speaker tonight. But the fact that I was not the first choice has everything to do with the remarks I want to make. If it was Sunday, I'd say something like, thank God for a second chance. We serve a God of a second chance who gives you a chance after the last chance, after the chance before that. But because I was not the first choice of speaker, I am reminded that years and years ago, before anybody ran for anything, I had the opportunity to meet Governor Wes Moore shortly after the release of his then new book, The Other Wes Moore. The premise of that book really asked the question, how can two people with the exact same name have such dramatically different lives? How is it, in other words, that two young men born into similar socioeconomic circumstances, given the same social opportunities and given the exact same name, could have such divergent experiences in America? I guess I was moved in thinking about that book because just as we're here tonight celebrating the work of the North Carolina Black Alliance, but yeah, go ahead and clap for the North Carolina Black Alliance. We're here celebrating that work, and by definition or by extension, we are fighting for our version of America, right here in the capital city. And in all 100 counties here in North Carolina, there are people who are fighting for a very different version of America too. I guess what I'm saying is that if you hear me as sharing nothing else with you this evening, with the November election squarely in front of us, please hear me as saying this: 2024 will be the most consequential election of our lifetimes because democracy itself is on the ballot. Hear me as saying this: not only is democracy at stake across America, but all eyes are on North Carolina because of our hotly contested gubernatorial race. Now, one version of America seeks to leave people out. It seeks to negate the valuable contributions that diverse students make at institutions like the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, like North Carolina State, and a host of other schools too. Rather than pushing for those campuses to look more like America, some groups want those campuses to look like a certain vanilla segment of America. That same version of America is really anti-democratic because it seeks less citizen participation at the polling place rather than more. It wants to limit access to early voting. It wants to do away with same-day voter registration, and it seeks to impose more voter restrictions that are nothing more than voter suppression laws. Yes, that segment of America is fighting against everything we stand for because they want to place democracy in the hands of the few instead of the many. Well, because 2024 is an election year, and because of its importance across the entire United States of America, but especially here in North Carolina, we've got to fight to protect democracy and not take one step backwards. Let's refuse to make America great again, but we've got to fight to move forward and fight to make sure America is an inclusive place for us all. I therefore want to remind you of some words that were shared by Barack Obama that emphasize not only our responsibility, but it also emphasizes our power. President Obama said these words: "Don't boo, vote. Now, inasmuch as I pray for Governor Wes Moore and the people of Maryland as they navigate disaster recovery in the wake of the Francis Scott Key Bridge's collapse, the differences brought about in his book, The Other Wes Moore, really serve as a foundation for where I want to take you for just a few moments tonight as we contrast these divergent perspectives on America. Let me tell you a true story. Last Sunday, I had the opportunity to be in Florida as I was the guest preacher for a special Sunday service down in Tampa. And the topic of the sermon was, wake up and stay woke. In talking about the anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion phobia that seems to be overtaking the United States of America, I reminded that congregation that it was most popularized in the state of Florida. It was just a couple of years ago, as their governor was seeking his party's nomination for president, he was trying to out-Trump Trump. And Florida's governor infamously said, Florida is where woke comes to die. Shortly after he made that statement, as I see people here from the congregation I'm blessed to serve, I told the good people at St. Joseph, stay tuned because Florida is moving to a state near you. Now, as we have seen with the politics that led Professor Nicole Hannah-Jones to leave UNC and go to my alma mater, Howard University, with recent headlines about DEI or anti-DEI posturing at Chapel Hill, and with the war on woke taking up resonance here in the Old North State, it's up to us to fight for democracy. Florida's governor and his state legislature changed the governing structure of state colleges and universities, claiming that there was a such thing as cancel culture. And they wanted viewpoint diversity laws that would allow students to record professors who were exposing them to things they didn't want to be taught. My God, I got 4 degrees and going from a 5th one. I thought that's part of what the educational process is all about, to expose you to some divergent perspectives. But in Governor DeSantis' version of America, instead of celebrating the economic impact of a company like Walt Disney World in Orlando and trying to work with a company that is no doubt one of the largest employers in his state, that governor would rather pick a fight with the Disney Corporation because of their policies that are rooted in diversity, equity, and inclusion that affirm, if it was Sunday, I'd say, somebody say all, affirm that we are all God's children, because everybody has the right to love who they want to love, and you ought to have the right to marry who you want to marry to. Last evening at the Executive Mansion, Governor Cooper made the case for diversity as he mentioned the value that certain corporations see in assembling diverse workforces. When you read authors like Scott Page in his books, The Difference and The Diversity Bonus, he too makes the case for diverse environments because they make good business sense, but in academic settings, they literally enhance the learning environment. Students are not placed in competition with one another, but instead, students are there to complement one another. Let me put it to you like this. I'm proud now to live in the Tar Heel State, but my roots are on the Bayou. Yeah, I'm from New Orleans, and I'm a card-carrying member of the Who Dat Nation. Because I grew up in New Orleans, my favorite food on the planet is gumbo. And gumbo doesn't just taste good, but gumbo gives a good recipe for life. Shrimp can be shrimp, chicken can be chicken, sausage can be sausage, and oysters can be oysters. Those ingredients don't compete with one another. Those ingredients come together to complement one another. And that same concept should apply at the state colleges and universities here in North Carolina. But in their version of America, anti-woke folks don't believe in the diversity of gumbo. They believe in the blandness of soup. They want to put a puree together where chicken and shrimp and sausage and oysters are all grounded together to make one bland substance in what they would call a post-racial world. Well, the election of Donald Trump, in response to the success of Barack Obama, lets us know that there's no such thing in America as a post-racial world. If we didn't look at differences based on race, Ahmaud Arbery would have been able to finish his afternoon jog. If we didn't look at differences based on race, George Floyd would still be living. And if we didn't look at differences based on race, those rogue police officers would not have entered with a no-knock warrant and shot and killed Breonna Taylor. What I'm trying to say is that our version of America we have to fight for, because diversity means diverse perspectives and diverse people come together to make America better. I want to pivot for a moment. And in keeping with the theme of another version of America, I want to talk about North Carolina, as we've taken some backward steps instead of forward steps in terms of who can participate in the election process and who is supposed to be excluded from the election process. Now, history tells us that the right to vote has always been synonymous with power in America. Regrettably, however, history also tells us that when voting power has been concentrated in the hands of Black Americans, a certain segment of America will raise hell to take that power away. History tells us that at the end of the Civil War in 1865, as political power was being shared during Reconstruction, a group of people put on white robes and decided they would raise hell to eliminate Black voting power. History tells us that in 1898, up the street in Wilmington, right here in North Carolina, after Blacks amassed too much political power, a group of white supremacists again put on some white robes and decided they would raise hell and take that power away. Well, after passage of the Voting Rights Act in 1965, an act that made possible the unprecedented election of blacks at the municipal, state, and federal levels, it was in 2013, during the administration of Barack Obama, that a group of justices on the United States Supreme Court put on black robes, and they decided Shelby County v. Holder, and they gutted the Voting Rights Act such that the old cliche became a reality. When the cat is away, the mice will play. And we all came to find out that we have not just some mice, but we got some rats in that North Carolina General Assembly. We saw the imposition of photo ID laws that were a clear intent to prevent blacks from voting, such that the U.S. Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals told the General Assembly, "You have targeted black voters with surgical precision." We saw unconstitutional gerrymanders and redistricting power grabs at the General Assembly just so those rats wouldn't have to give up their cheese. We even saw a new North Carolina Supreme Court take the unprecedented act of reopening cases that had already been decided to make sure those rats would be in power for at least another 10 years. What I'm suggesting to you is that when things get as bad as they have gotten in North Carolina, and with November and the most consequential election of our lifetimes right around the corner, remember those words that Barack Obama said. Don't boo, vote. Vote like your life depends on it. Vote like democracy depends on it, because it really does. Now, it's one thing to encourage you to vote with an understanding that you should be engaged in collaborating with others and building alliances to make sure that people who share your interests are voting and make sure people vote in mass numbers. But it's another thing to identify and to address the issues that should motivate people to vote like they've never voted before. They tell me that when you're trying to reach young people, you can't just tell young people, you know, somebody died so you'd have the right to vote. No, young people say, you got to talk to me about the issues. What are the issues that I should be voting for? Now, in terms of trying to highlight just a few of those issues that will define a quote-unquote black agenda for black America, let me remind you that all eyes will remain here on North Carolina because of our gubernatorial race. As I talk about black issues, I'm going to say what I think is obvious. Hello? Okay. There's an old expression that goes, just because he looked like me, don't mean he for me. Did you catch that? Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? There's an old expression that goes, just because he got my skin, don't make him none of my kin. What I'm really trying to say is that if we don't have a substantive black agenda, an agenda that will look at our issues and look at our politics, we'll really fall for a wolf in sheep's clothing. Let me begin at the federal level. We need to support passage of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. Since the Supreme Court acted in deciding Shelby County v. Holder, the onus has shifted, Representative Foushee, to pass legislation that will make permanent those protections that have been rolled away. Well, between the filibuster in the Senate with people like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, along with the fumbling of votes and revotes to see who will be the speaker, who will survive the speakership, our agenda has been placed on a back burner. So when you don't boo, but when you vote, make sure you vote for Valerie Foushee, because she has proven she will stand up in Washington. She will fight for us in Washington in the midst of all of the chaos that has become associated with Washington. Our agenda must also include support for legislation like the George Floyd Justice in Police Act, because racial profiling is wrong, and what happened to George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota should never happen to another black American anywhere in these United States of America. And our agenda can't just turn a blind eye to the student loan crisis in America. With the Supreme Court having once again closed the door with the Biden v. Nebraska decision, we need Congress to act. The fact remains that poor people, black people, and brown people have been disproportionately impacted by student loans, in many instances taking out loans to attend proprietary or for-profit schools like Trump University. Thank you, President Biden, for acting, but the president can't do it alone. Debt relief and reform have got to be part of our agenda because so many black Americans still don't own their first home. With no prospects of 40 acres and a mule in sight, when things get this bad in America, remember, don't boo, vote. Vote like democracy depended on it. Here in Raleigh, our agenda has got to include women's health care and reproductive justice. Don't miss your shout. Go ahead and clap for women's health care and reproductive justice. Our agenda has got to include proactive legislation that will promote diversity on college campuses and not bow down simply because somebody else has legislation that supports another or an alternative version of what America is supposed to look like. Our agenda has also got to include environmental justice. Just like the black community mobilized to address environmental justice issues in Warren County back in 1982, we've got to again mobilize to address environmental issues in all 100 counties here in 2024. What I'm really saying is that 2024 is too important to stay home. 2024 is too important to not bring somebody else to the polling place too. 2024 again presents the most consequential election of our lifetime. So if you hear me as saying nothing else again, I remind you those words of Barack Obama. Don't boo, vote. I want to leave you now with some remarks shared by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he was speaking at a time that was similar in context to where we are now. King talked about the fierce urgency of now. His remarks were these: we are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action. In other words, don't boo, vote. God bless you, God keep you, and thank you for the honor of having me share with you this evening.